All right, well, good morning, New Life Church. Man, it is so good to be in the house. Anybody missed me a little bit? Yes. 3 of you. Okay, anyway, that's the response I get from my wife. Well, hey, it is good to be back in the house, man. We have all kinds of cool things going on. We have a marriage retreat going on this weekend. I got to tell you about it. Leslie and I were there, we're speaking here this weekend, and it is so cool. We have there was every bed was full. There was 50 couples. They're there working hard on their marriage, and so I was sharing with them some, and I really was trying to help the men out because, guys, we know how our wives can be. So when I was in Ephesians 5, I hit the submission topic. I was, guys, you would have been proud. You've been high-fiving me, man, rocking me, all that. I was hitting it real strong, and I want to share just a portion with you, okay? You guys, any guys want to hear a little bit of that this morning? Yes. Elbow your wife, say, you better listen up, okay? Here we go. You know, I was speaking of submission. This husband, he went to the psychiatrist because, and he's talking to the psychiatrist about his marriage, and the psychiatrist was telling him that he doesn't have to be or let his wife henpeck him anymore. You with me? He says, go home, and I want you to show her who's the boss. So the husband takes the doctor's advice, and he goes home, and he slams the door when he walks right into the house, and he goes up to his wife, and he points at her finger, and says, from now on, she says, I'm the one that's going to be in charge here. I want supper right now. And once my supper is on the table, I want you to go upstairs, okay? And I want you to lay out my clothes because I'm going out with the boys tonight and you're going to stay home where you belong. And he said, when I am eating, he said, you're also going to have to do a few other things. You want to guess what that is? And she's staring at him. He says, you're going to have to comb my hair. You're going to have to give me a shave. You're going to have to tie my necktie. And she calmly responds to say, because he was saying, guess who has to do that? And she said, the Undertaker. Okay, maybe it wasn't as funny as I thought it was. I messed up half the joke. I did. In other words, ladies, straighten up. All right, let's just go right there. Oh, Lord, I messed up. It was a lot funnier at the marriage retreat. I promise you. Call them and ask them. They'll tell you. Boy, I messed it up, baby. I know I did. You straighten up. I want them to know. But hey, good morning. Hey, can you welcome everybody that's watching you online? Come on. Good morning, online church. Come on. Let's welcome them this morning. Hey, just to give you a quick update, guys, I'm so thankful for you. We're able to, we have 18 campuses around the state. I'm so thankful to be part of something so big. And as many of you know, we're working with the BB campus. There's been some transition there. And I just want to give you an update because you play a big part in this. In the last 2 months since we have grown almost 18%. Can we give God a hand, church? Come on. God has done a great job. We built some infrastructure. And now what I need you to be praying for, we have to find the pastors that are going to take that campus forward. But God is moving. How many know God is moving everywhere? If you don't realize he's moving, you may want to pinch yourself, and because I tell you, he is moving. And this is what I want you to always remember, and I always look forward to telling you how much we love you, because your church loves you, and I promise you we are praying for you and your families, and we are here to assist you in living out. This is what's so important that you got to get in this day and hour. We're here to assist you in living out that fully devoted follower of Christ's life that I trust you're aiming at. Look to your neighbor and say, you better be aiming at that. Come on, let them know. You got to be aiming at that. Well, we are in week 4 of our series, Humans. And Psalms 103:14, it says, for he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. In other words, God knows that we're human. Even the toughest brothers, we got some tough brothers in this place, and even the toughest young ladies in this place, or ladies in this place, even the toughest ones, all of us, at the end of the day, we're human and we're fragile. And what that simply means is this, listen, we need help in life because we're human. We can't do it all ourselves. Every single one of us need God. So that's what we've been aiming at in this series. So today I want to talk about a need that we all have at some level. I don't care what age demographic you're in, and this need of a human is called acceptance. And because of this, we can have this strong tendency, all of us, to truly try to please people, to win their approval, to impress them. I'm 60 years old, and as I was going through this message, it's so interesting. I can even see in my life today why I'm doing things just trying to get the approval of people. So let me ask it this way. I'm going to ask you guys this question. Now, I want you to be honest. Look within yourself. I don't care how old or young you are. How many of you may care too much about what others think? Think about that. We all have this tendency. We all can lean this way. And when we do, a well-known psychiatrist, her name is Harriet Breaker, she says this, she calls it the disease to please. It's a form of addiction, she said. It's like a drug addict seeking drugs. People pleasers seek approval. Now, the Apostle Paul, many of you know about the Apostle Paul. He wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. Now, one thing we know for sure about the Apostle Paul, he was not a people pleaser. And there was a situation here in the Galatian church where there's this group of people came in, and they're preaching a different gospel. They're preaching a gospel of works and legalism when Paul had always taught, the Bible clearly preaches a gospel of grace. So Paul was furious at the Galatians in this church because some of them were so caught up in people pleasing that they were just going along with these Judaizers and letting them preach this and have their way. So Paul comes into the church of Galatia and he lines them all out. And he makes it clear it's faith in Jesus alone that we find salvation. Anybody give me an because it's true. Thank God for that. So Galatians 1:10-12, here he is. Paul says, obviously, he said, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, he said, I would not be Christ's servant. And what he's talking about here, he's talking about what drives us. What are our motivations in what we do? What controls us? And if our goal, if what's really driving us behind the scenes, our motivation is pleasing people first, what ends up happening, we have a very difficult time in pleasing God. Actually, our walk with Christ gets hindered. So the Apostle Paul spoke with no apology, because he knew that they were in danger. He knew they could not live their lives to please others, in this case the Judaizers, and also please God at the same time. Lecrae, who's a rapper, I like to call him a buddy, even though I never met him, but if I met him, him and I would get along real good because we both have that in us. But he said this in one of his songs. The song's called Free From All, and Free From It All. And it's this. He said, if you live for people's acceptance, he says you'll die from their rejection. And I want you to just think about that for a moment. So what I want to do is I want to get us all involved this morning, and I want to talk about 4 different kinds of people pleasers. And I want you to be honest with yourself. Actually, you can elbow people that are with you if you want to. I've used this example before, but you can elbow them next to if they fit this category. But I want you to look within yourself because this will help you as we move forward with the message. The first type of a people pleaser is what you call the doormat. The doormat says, I'll do anything for anybody. The doormat is one of those people that say yes to everything. The doormat has zero ability to say no. Actually, if they say no, they feel guilty about it. I don't know if anybody's relating to this. And they can always be counted on because they always say yes. Can you bring snacks to the game? Yes. Can you be the secretary or treasurer of the POA? Yes. Can you be the hostess of my shower? Yes. Can you watch my kids? Yes. Can you loan me some money? Yes. Can you watch my cats? No. There's one no. That's the only no people pleasers will say. But people who say yes, you got to hear this. People who say yes all the time end up getting bitter at people. Now, I want you to think about this. But in reality, they're really mad at themselves because they're the ones that said yes. They seem nice on the outside, but on the inside, they're angry. They suppress their feelings. They do things out of obligation. And if you can relate to that, I was talking to someone earlier, and I think all of us at different seasons of our lives can relate to all that we're going to talk about today. But if you can relate to that right now, if that's where you at, listen to this. Your yes to people sometimes will make you have to say no to God. The second one's the chameleon. I'll change for everybody. They change and adjust to whoever they're around. They kind of just like blend into the environment. When they're around church friends, they talk about, church, hey, praise Yahweh, or praise Jesus, or praise hallelujah, glory to God. I love the book of Job. They just try, they try to fit in. And then they get around their work crowd. And I don't know if that if that's who they really are. But a lot of times they'll get around the work crowd and they'll speak differently around the work crowd because they're just trying to fit in. And sometimes they literally will just kind of compromise who they are just to fit in. Just to fit in there. When they get around the artsy friends, like if I get around artsy friends, well, I loved artesian bread. The artsy people eat that bread, right? And I love the stuff you throw on canvas, and they try to talk their talk. They get around sports. They're not a sports enthusiast. They get around sports friends, and they're starting to talk, man, LeBron James, man, that touchdown he threw yesterday, it was amazing. I couldn't believe it. And Tom Brady, he does a reverse dunk like I've never seen nobody do it. They're just trying to blend. It would like me being a Hog fan. Hey, pig suey wooey yui, however you guys say it. Some of my favorite people are pig suey wooey people, and it's just sad. Okay, let's keep moving. The main reason some people do this, though, now I want you to track with me. I really believe this is going to help some of you today, and don't you dare sit here and think you're too old for this. This happens to us in life at 40, 50, 60 years old. Now, here, listen to this, okay? The main reason why some people do this is because they're afraid, now hear me, of what people might think of them if they really knew them. They seek attention, they act like they have knowledge in everything. Matthew 6:5, Jesus addresses this. He says, when you pray, he says, don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray publicly on the street corners and in the synagogues where everyone can see them. This is what happened to the religious people that day, the priests, and they were all about pleasing people. So they wanted to do everything in front of people because they were all about pleasing people and they weren't about pleasing God. The third one, now I know some of you fit this category, and you want to elbow this one if he's in a room sitting next to you. It's called the bull. The bull says, I'll never change for anyone. But this type cares so much about what people might think, they don't do what they know they need to do. And mainly it's because, at the end of the day, it's because of reputation. It's because they're trying to uphold this image. Like they're going to come to church and they're not going to act like they're getting into it at all. You're not going to see them lift their hands, and don't ask them to pray over anybody because they have this image that they're trying to uphold. And this image is rooted, at the end of the day, in fear. It's fear of what people would think about them if they really lived their lives for God. King David, it was interesting, he worshiped and he danced in the streets to God and his wife, and his wife got mad at him and she was embarrassed. And the Bible says when she got mad and embarrassed, and it was named David, it said David, I loved his response. He says, I'll become even more undignified than this. And he started doing the gritty. No? All right, forget it. How about the whip? All right, forget. All right, but he started doing dances like that. He got more undignified. Look to your neighbor and say, he has no rhythm at all. Gritty. The gritty is what they do in the end zone, for those of you who don't know, okay? So anyway. Leslie spurs me on because she's saying, no, don't do it. No, don't do it. All right. What was I talking? Oh, the gritty. Okay, anyway. Hey, you know that I'm not trying to be a people pleaser doing that on stage. So listen, it's difficult to live a passionate life for God, fully devoted. Remember, we're all in life for God when we're caught up in caring more about our image at the same time. Because I tell you, I've seen families, when I go into the hospital room, and there's an urgent situation going on there. They're not looking for me to pray some dignified and distinguished prayer. They're looking for someone to call down heaven to earth because they need a miracle. Now, the fourth one, this is it, is the peacekeeper. Okay, I'll make everyone happy. I just don't want anybody to be mad. You mad, bro? Or they just want to get along with everybody. They want everybody just to kiss and make up. They over apologize. Like they apologize because you're late. They over apologize. And this is a lot of the reason why they hate conflict or confrontation. They avoid it with everything possible. And the truth is you cannot have a healthy, strong marriage and relationships and friendships without times of confrontation and conflict, and they just try to avoid that. It's out of fear. Now, my story of this, when I read all four of them, there's times in my life I think I fit in every category, but I was trying to remember, because I battled with this people-pleasing thing all of my life, off and on. I remember back when I was younger, I just cared way too much. And I think it's part of maturing. And I think if I'm speaking to young people today, I want you to hear me on this, because you can avoid making a lot of mistakes. Because if you look at the root of why you do what you do sometimes, a lot of times it's around pleasing people. Because I was just so concerned with what other people thought of me. When it was around 12 and a half years old, I was around 12 and a half, 13 years away. Around 12 or so, when I first got introduced to Jesus and I prayed the prayer, but it just never, I just never locked in. So I began to live my life, and as I began to grow up, I began to live my life in such a way that I was making a lot of unwise choices. And I can remember, as I look back, the reason why I was making those choices, because at the end, I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be popular. Like, I wanted to be part of this cool club. And listen, we do this at 30, 40, 50, 60 years old as well. And I could remember this, that I could remember feeling dread about doing certain things, because inside I really didn't want to do some of this stuff, but because I wanted to fit in, I wanted to belong, I wanted to be accepted. I can remember when I took my first hit on, was it doobie, whatever, first hit on marijuana, okay? They call it something these days. But I remember when I didn't want to do it. It tasted awful. I can remember when I started drinking beer. We'd be in the woods with my friends, and tall. They still have Tall Boys. Tall Boy. And we had Colt 45 malt liquor. You may have never heard. We had Colt 45, and we'd be out there, all of us in there, and I just wanted to fit in. So I'm acting like I'm drinking. And we used to have this saying. The saying was, "Hey, bro, I could go water the daisies." You can think about what that is in a minute. So I would do that over and over again. Hey, I'm acting, and I say, "Hey, bro, I'll go water the daisies." And what I would do is I would go into the woods. And it would sound like a faucet, because I'm pouring my Colt 45 malt liquor, out, because I really didn't want to do it. Listen, the way I talked. Now, I'm a bad cursor. Like if you would hear me curse, you would say, "That bro never curses." That's the way I always was. But some people are really good at, who's really good at cursing out here? You're just natural. It flows out of you. Come on. Don't lie in church. God will get you. Go ahead. I just need one or two so I can call you when I need to curse at somebody. Anybody? Okay, But wait, we got something real natural. We got, all right, hey, but listen, I got to tell you, I do have one curse word that flows pretty good. And sometimes it's a curse word and sometimes it's not. And some of you heard this before, so get over it, but it's one of my favorite. Two fish swimming along. They run into a cement wall. The one looks at the other and goes, "Damn." Okay, we'll keep moving. Maybe that's why I don't swear very good. I love that. I love it. I just swore in church. Okay. See, brother, me and you flow. Me back at him. All right. Hey, listen. I dated girls. Now, I dated girls I didn't even like. To fit in, I did. I had some. Did you hear what I said about submission earlier? No, I like you. That's why I made. All right, wait on. Rude people in our services. You messed me all up. I was really going to flow with that one. I went to parties, though, truthfully, though. I went to parties I didn't want to go to. And what I know now is conviction. That's what was on me then. That's why I just could not, enjoy it. I just didn't want to do it. I dreaded it a lot of times. And what happened in my life was my heart got hardened, but it got hardened so people would like me. And I can remember coming to the day where I felt so empty in trying to please people and to fit in and to be cool and all of those things. I remember I felt so empty, man. I just had to make a change. I had to make an adjustment in my life. And so I began to just say, something, I don't have to be part of the cool group anymore. And I started thinking about, okay, I'm gonna give my life to Christ. And when I truly gave my life to Christ, I knew some of my friends would maybe think I'm super weird. And guess what? Some of them thought I was super weird. It happened that way. And some of those things I thought would happen, they weren't pleased with me anymore. But man, I just was so empty doing it their way. And I remember when I got called, I felt this call in my life to do what I do right now. I can remember the first things that come to my mind. Think about this. Whenever we feel something, a call of something we don't want to do, the first thing that comes to my mind, I can't stand up in front of people and preach and give sermons. I'm going to look like an idiot. And some of you say you do a good job at that, Pastor Mark. But I thought about that even way back then. And I thought about, I just thought about I can't lead people spiritually. And think about this. If you think about any of those reasons why all those fears are about pleasing people. And you can see how this all steers us away from the will of God. Proverbs 29:25 says, the fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. That word snare in the Hebrew means mokesh, which is a noose. It's used for catching animals. And what it's saying is if we give in too much to what people think about us, it's a trap. But I also want to be clear about something, because all of us care at some level what people think about us, and it's good. Like, it's good to have a good reputation. We want to work hard at that. It's actually good for people to value us. It's good that people like us. It's good that we have influence. It's also good to listen to others in our world, friends and counsel and mentors. But the problem is this: when we care more about what people think than about what God thinks about us. One man said it like this. He says, when we have this unhealthy craving for people's approval, and we have an oversized fear of people's rejection. And ultimately what happens, this is going to sound strong, but it's true. Ultimately what happens, people become God in our lives. And that's why this is so dangerous. I want you to write this down. When people become too big, God becomes too small. When people become too big, God becomes too small. And why this matters so much, guys, we cannot please people and God all the time. There's going to be times where it just collides, and there's going to be conflict with one another. And we have one shot, God. We have one shot at this life. We have one shot at the dream that God has given us. And I know if you're anything like me, man, you don't want to miss it. You want to get it right. And for some of you today, I believe we're going to have a defining moment. I believe God's going to speak to you. Some of you today have been praying about this, that this is going to be a day where you're going to make that decision. It's going to be God in front of people. And you're going to stop depending upon affirmation. You're going to stop depending on this approval from people, and it to the place where it affects your moods. It affects everything that you do. You're going to stop depending on that, and you're going to experience the confidence and freedom that comes when we seek God's approval above all else. When people become too big, God becomes too small. So how do we live to please God over people? Number one, if you're taking notes, here we go. Know who you really are. I don't know if I've heard anything more in my Christian life than this: how important it is to know who you really are as a Christ follower. And I want to challenge you today to take heed of it, because you're going to be like me. You've heard this over and over and over again, because this is so foundational. And it gives us so much muscle when we understand that who we are, when we're confident in who we are in Christ. In 1 Thessalonians, let's look at this, Paul. He says, for we speak as messengers approved by God to be entrusted with the good news. Listen to this. Our purpose is to please God, not people. He alone examines the motives of our heart. Never once did we try to win you with flattery, as you well know. And God is our witness that we were not pretending to be your friends just to get your money. As for human praise, we have never sought it from you or anyone else. I was thinking about this past Christmas. We have three granddaughters. They're like, 5, 3, and something like that, and 1.5. They're all just adorable, and half their faces need to come off and all that. And so Leslie and I bought them princess dresses. And so, we bought them princess dresses, and you know how they are. When they put the princess dresses, they all come out and they want to show their print. They all come out like this with their princess, and they literally think they're princesses. I mean, they're convinced of it. So after they're doing this and wanting you to make a big deal, then I would watch them when no one's paying attention, and you should see them go. They're over there like they're in a little princess world. They're singing Beauty and the Beast, whatever, or Cinderella, the mermaid. And they're just like they're a princess. They're singing these songs. They're all by themselves, Or they'll be singing the song and they'll be dancing. Nobody's even watching. They'll be, da-da, I'm a princess, and all. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this because, something? They don't care what anybody thinks. They're all approved all by themselves. It's this innocence, this purity. That's why the Bible says we got to be like little children. He wants us to have that mentality because you are a prince. Believe it or not, some of you don't look like a prince, but you are in God's eyes. We're a prince. You're princesses in his eyes. You're his boy. You're his girl. Not based on how good you are or what you have done, based on who Jesus Christ is and how he was more than enough and how he was good enough. You got it going on. I got it going on in God's eyes. And some people think, well, I can't think that way. No. When you think that way, it changes everything. Because all of a sudden you're pleasing God because you want to. Want to. A friend of mine says it like that. Instead of because you have to. Listen, we've been made. We got to be who God's called us to be. And the reason why, it's our sweet spot. We're the best that we can be when we're being who God created us to be. But when you do that, what happens is, this is where the people-pleasing comes in. What happens is there will be people that just don't get you. There will be people in your life, they don't agree with you. They don't understand your decision. And you may have to feel like you're walking alone a little bit when you step out and you begin to be who God called you to be. Jesus said this in John 5:41-44. He says, your approval. Now, he's talking to some of the most influential people in his day. He says, your approval means nothing to me. He says, because I know you don't have God's love within you. For I have come to you in my Father's name, and you have rejected me. Yet if others come in their own name, you gladly welcome them. No wonder you can't believe, for you gladly honor each other, but you don't care about the honor that comes from the one alone who is God. The Bible says that he was well pleased with Jesus, and because he's well pleased with Jesus and we're in Christ, guess what? Right where you're at right now, he is well pleased with you. He's a good God. Can we give him a hand this morning, guys? He is that good. I just hope you get that. So he wants us to be confident, number two, in who he made us. Number two, we need to know where we're going. I could be around this one all day, but I won't. I'm going to go quickly. But in our lives, we got to be clear about where we're going. Because a lot of times we see where everyone else is going, then we shape our lives around where they're going. As I've watched culture over the last 10 years from a pastor's perspective, one thing I've really noticed is I've watched families, young families, look at other young families, and wherever that other young families were going, they would just follow them. Whatever they're having their kids doing, they would just have their kids do that as well. And what ends up happening is we begin to follow. What happens is those other families in our world are shaping us instead of God and his plan and his will shaping us. If you don't know where you're going, see what happens is we just react to life. From my perspective, because I'm a pastor and over the last 10 years, it is a challenge as a pastor, just to be honest with you, that you want to please people. I want you all to like me. And I know it's like almost impossible to get you all to like, but you want everybody to like you. And I'll have people come up to me and say, Pastor Mark, I've been coming to this church for so long. I've been praying for you to do this. I've been praying you need to change that. Pastor Mark, you need to do this. And you know what's so cool when you understand where you're going? I'm always able to look them in the eye and love them with all my heart and say, you know something? I said, I'm really clear in where God's taking us. And I said, if this frustrates you week in, week out, then don't keep coming here and praying that I change. I said, go find somewhere, another church where you're going to find what you're looking for. We'll bless you. I'll love you. But I'm going to be honest for you. It is very difficult sometimes to take that stance. But what enables me to do, I am clear about where I'm going. You tracking with me, guys? Okay? So let me ask you, what is God's vision for your life? Like, what is his purpose? And whenever you hear that, you got to think you think of this huge, magnificent thing. No, it could be as simple as his vision for my life right now is to follow him closely. His vision for my life right now is to love people that are around. It could be something that simple. Don't make it this because every single soul, every single person matters to God. It all has value, and we can't compare God's calling with other people. He has a specific calling for you right now. What is that calling? What does God want us to do? Where to go? We got to let him direct us where to go, what to do, and who to be friends with. Because God's calling on our life. I love the way this one person said it. It said this is our filter. Like if you're called to raise godly friends, that's your filter of the choices and the decisions that you make. You know, it's a filter out of, what doesn't serve God. It filters that out. It filters out certain people sometimes. It filters out the ways we're living and unhealthy habits. And it's all for the sake of something so much bigger. It's eternity. And just some of us need to say no to those things in our life that are not adding up to the vision, the plan, the call that God has for our lives. So if I can challenge you today, say yes to God and no to people. And sometimes it's really like not a bad no, or it's not a bad ask. Years ago, and I've shared this when I was in Casa Grande, Arizona, I got cut by the Giants, and by the way, they just don't recognize great talent. So I got cut by the Giants, and then I went to California where my dad lived, and my dad, when I went there, I had all kinds of opportunity for ball out there, and he wanted me to live there and stay there. But you know, there's something that was happening on the inside of me. I knew I had a call in my life, and I knew I was supposed to come back, and I remember having these conversations with my dad, and it's hard to tell your dad no, not to stay, not to pursue this dream he even had for me, but I came back because of the call. And now when I talk to my dad is so proud of that decision that I made, because now I've answered the call on my life. But if I would have stayed there and pursued that dream, the dream that him and I talked about, and not God's dream, see, it wasn't bad, but I knew there was a call. So the call directed my path. We need to be confident in who we are. We need to be clear about what God has called us to do. And I'm going to tell you, as I've grown older, though, I've learned it's impossible to please everyone anyway, right? But I also learned it's easy to tick off anybody, okay? You want to tick off somebody, you can do that. Okay, number 3. Man, I'm 0 for 3 in my jokes today, except when you said something to me. Number 3, and we're landing it, guys. Be cautious about who you listen to. Now, lean in, and we're going to land this. Here we have Jesus. He's standing before Pilate before he's crucified. In a verse in Luke 23:18, he says, "Then a mighty roar rose from the crowd." And I want you all to look at me for a minute, because the truth is we all have crowds in our lives. I want you to think about this. "And with one voice, the crowd shouted, 'Kill him and release Barabbas to us.' Barabbas was in prison for taking part in an insurrection in Jerusalem against the government and for murder. Pilate argued with him because he wanted to release Jesus." Now, it was unheard of for a Roman emperor to ever argue with common people, even to rationalize with them. It's just amazing this is going on. Well, verse 21, "But they kept shouting, 'Crucify him, crucify him.' For the third time he demanded, 'Why? What crime has been committed?' He says, I have found no reason to sentence him to death, so I will have him flogged, and then I'm going to release him. But the mob," we all got a mob. That's friends, that's peers, that's social media, that's culture. We have these voices that we're constantly listening to. We're flipping through the reel. We're constantly hearing these voices. This is the mob. So this mob is crying out, and the Bible says it's shouting louder. I think about our culture and all these avenues of information. It's just like this. We're shouting louder. It's shouting louder, demanding that Jesus be crucified. And listen, their voices prevailed. And some of us are sitting here today, and the mob's voices have prevailed, or wanting to prevail, or trying to prevail. So Pilate sentenced Jesus, it prevailed, to die as they demanded, as they had requested. He released Barabbas, the man in prison for insurrection and murder, but he turned Jesus over to them to do as they wished. Pilate knew what he needed to do. It was clear. But he let the crowd, the voices, the mob talk him out of it. And here's the picture, perfect. This is a perfect picture of a people pleaser. And I think if you're listening to me this morning and you're going to be honest with yourself, I think we can see a little bit of ourselves in Pilate. Because he was a man who knew what he should do, And he was a man that had the power to do it. But he was controlled by the voices of the mob or the crowd. If you think about it, the crowd literally convinced Pilate to kill an innocent man. And I want to say something, church. We got to be careful who we listen to. As I was preparing this message, the Spirit of God, and again, I always let you guys all be the judge of this if this is speaking to you, because this is not for everybody. But you'll know if the Spirit of God's speaking to you. It was like a 911 went off on the inside of me, like this rescue. You got to say this today, that there are someone trying to convince you to give up your virginity. Right now, someone's trying to convince you of it. And the Spirit of God's saying, don't do it. No. And there's some of you listening out here, please hear me, that you may have messed up in life somehow or another. You got things haven't worked out, you know, and you're single again in life. You could be 30, 40, 50 years old or whatever. You are thinking as you move down the road that you need to be active sexually. It's a trap. The Spirit of God is saying today, this is for somebody, I don't know who it is, be a virgin. Spiritually right now, be a virgin in your relationships. Do it the right way. Plan a foundation, because when you take the next step, you're going to be on a rock-solid foundation for a lasting relationship. If that's for you, I know it's not for everybody. You'll know. It's so interesting when the Lord gives me things, and I know it's Him. It just, when those words are spoken, you know who it is. Take heed, He loves you. We got to be careful who we listen to. And you know, probably the biggest reason is because one day, I don't know if you think about this, I do, because I have this fear of God because I stand before you all the time. And I'm going to be judged a little differently because of this position and calling He's given me. And I think about the day I'm going to stand before God, and I'm going to answer for what I said up here. I'm going to answer for the way I've pastored you and taught you the Word. And I have a reverent fear. I don't want to get that wrong. And see, all of us one day we're going to stand before God. And guess what? The people that are trying to get us, the people that we're trying to please, aren't going to have to answer to God for us. We are. So let me close this today. I mentioned earlier about how I ran from God, and I can remember all of that. But I remember when I submitted my will to God. I remember the street I was on. I remember the house. I remember it all. And when I submitted my life to God, it was so interesting. When I truly surrendered, it wasn't just part of the journey. I mean, I'm yours now, Lord. I'm all in. It was almost like these chains of wanting to be accepted by people, these chains of wanting to be part of the cool gang, these chains of acceptance and people of approval. It's almost like they just fell off. There was still some desire there, don't get me wrong, but it was almost like the control of it fell off of me. And my desire shifted. My desire shifted that now I want to please God more than anything or anyone else. And what I began to realize about people pleasing, wanting acceptance from people so badly, it's rooted in fear. And what the fear is rejection. And let me say something to you. Anytime there's a healthy fear, you know, like just don't jump off that cliff, you know, I mean, but anytime fear is driving your motives or your motivation, the end result is always death-filled results. It's not good. So this fear of rejection, and it hurts to be rejected. We all know it. We've all been there. But it's natural to crave approval from our parents, from our mentors, from our friends, from people that we look up to. However, in the end, the most important place, the most important person that we should seek approval from is God. And when we seek God's approval, listen, when you seek His approval first, do you realize that's what's best for all the people that you're seeking approval from? By you seeking approval from God over them. God uses that in their lives. And I'll tell you how. For me, when I made that decision, I had the privilege and honor leading my whole family over the next few years to the Lord. That's what happens when we put God's approval above ours. You know, Jesus knows what it feels like to be rejected. 1 Peter 2:4 says he was rejected by people, his hometown people, one of his own boys, Judas. But it says he was chosen by God for great honor. Jesus was rejected. He felt the pain of that. He knows the pain of that. But he was rejected so we could be accepted. When we feel the pain of rejection in our lives for the cause of Christ, it really opens the doors like it did with Jesus for other people to find the acceptance that they are looking for. So I want you to know approval is available to you. How do you find it? Well, I'm a Rocky Balboa fan, Rocky movies. Anybody out there? Come on, Rocky. I've shared this illustration before, but I think this fits right here. The night before Rocky's great fight, he's sitting on the edge of his bed, and he's running the fingers through his hair. And Adrian wakes up. And he looks at Adrian, he said, Adrian, if I could just go 15 rounds with the champ, Adrian. Adrian, no one has gone 15 rounds with the champ. He said, Adrian, if I could just go 15 rounds with the champ, then I'll know that I'm not a bum. I think a lot of us live our whole lives that way. I think we're just trying to prove to ourselves and others that we're not a bum, that we matter, that we're significant, that we're valuable. And here's how you can find the approval of God. Here it is, faith in Jesus. See, that's why we're called, when we put our faith in Jesus, that's why we're called believers and not achievers. With heads bowed and eyes shut, guys, thank you for letting me share my heart with you today. Hebrews says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. It's putting our faith in Jesus and Jesus alone, believing and receiving him, where we gain our ultimate approval, where we gain the approval that can only satisfy that craving in our soul. It's the only approval that can ever satisfy it. So today you say, first of all, I want to speak to those who say, Pastor Mark, this message has spoken to me today. I can see areas in my life where people are way too big and God's way too small, and I'm going to take heed to that today. And I'm going to begin to change where I'm finding my approval. And you want me to pray for you without anybody looking around. Lift up your hand.